A quick video to talk about writing Unit 1, Lesson 6. Let's get started. So, our target today says, I can make the characters in my story talk. Today, we will review our writing tools, discover dialogue in Katie Woo Has the Flu and My Poppy Has a Motorcycle, learn how to add dialogue, and then begin writing our rough drafts. So, we have learned about many ways of making our small moment stories stand out. Let's review some of the writing tools we've used so far. First, friends, we all know about using our time words. It is very important that in our small moment story, we remember to use our time words because they help us to organize the events of our story. Our time words are first, next, then, after that, and last. The next tool we worked on is action. We add action to make our stories feel more realistic and exciting. So we can use action words like shouted, laughed, barked, flew, walked, cried, watched, spin, jumped, and so many more, friends. But we want to focus on adding action to our stories to make them a little more exciting. And then the last one we learned about, our last writing tool, was show, don't tell. We want to show how the characters feel instead of just telling. So for example, we don't want to tell, I was nervous to ride the roller coaster. Instead, we want to show that you're nervous. My hands started shaking and sweating while I waited in line for the ride. I could feel butterflies in my stomach when it was my turn to go. So today, we're going to learn about a new writing tool called dialogue. Dialogue is conversation that characters in a story have with each other or thoughts they have to themselves. We can tell when there is dialogue in a text when the author uses quotation marks or speech bubbles. Let's learn more about those two things. Quotation marks are used to show what characters either say out loud to others or to themselves. We can see quotation marks in texts like Katie Woo Has the Flu. And quotation marks, friends, are two little commas that float in the air, and we put them around the words that someone says out of their mouth or the thoughts that come out of their head, okay? So let's look at Katie Woo Has the Flu. Chapter 2, Sick at Home. Soon, Katie began to shiver. How can I feel cold and hot at the same time, she wondered. The flu is tricky, said her mom. So on this page, friends, we can see quotation marks. If we look, I'll use my pointer. We have quotation marks here and here. Whenever we're writing something that a character says, we need to have quotation marks at the beginning and at the end of what they said. So Katie said out of her mouth, how can I feel cold and hot at the same time? And then we use quotation marks to say that that's what she said, and then we add, she wondered. We can also see quotation marks here with where her mother says something. The flu is tricky, said her mom. For this, we were sure to put in our quotation marks at the beginning and end of what her mom said, and then we tell the reader who said it. The flu is tricky, said her mom. Let's look at the next page. That's a sneaky trick, said Katie. Katie's mom gave her pills to take. Yuck, Katie groaned. Pills are such pills. So here on this page, again, we can see quotation marks here that tells us that Katie said that's a sneaky trick. And then the author told us that Katie said that. Next, we can see quotation marks around yuck and pills are such pills because these are things that Katie said out of her mouth. And the author let us know that by saying Katie groaned. Now, let's look at our speech bubbles. Speech bubbles are another way to show that characters are speaking or thinking. We can see speech bubbles in text like, My Poppy Has a Motorcycle. So if we look at My Poppy Has a Motorcycle, we can see that the author uses speech bubbles to show that the people are speaking. She's sure to put a line from the character's mouth so we know exactly who's talking. So here it says, Trabajando duro, muchachos. And then this character says, a little bit, not too much. These speech bubbles help let us know who is talking and to whom. Let's look at another example. When our character visited her abuelos, they said, mija, adios, mi reina. And then our character says, adios. See how we use the speech bubbles to say what the grandparents said, and then how our character responded. And in our last example, on the very last page of our book, her papi tells her, mañana we fly again. This speech bubble lets us know that that's something that papi said out of his mouth. So these are some examples of quotation marks and speech bubbles that help show that our characters are speaking. Now, in our small moments stories, we're going to add dialogue that mostly has quotation marks because we're not drawing many pictures to have speech bubbles. So let's see an example of how I added dialogue to my rough draft. I also didn't forget to use my time words, add some more action, and show not tell my feelings. So let's take a look. So here you will see Miss Anissa has her introduction from her first rough draft. We should be working on our second rough draft. How you would do that is you would have your first rough draft on one side of your page, and then you have a nice clean page on the other side where you can start writing your second rough draft. Your second rough draft should have more details, it should have action, it should still have your time words, and of course now we want to work on show not tell and adding some dialogue. Okay, so let's see what I wrote in my first rough draft. I said, I always wanted a dog. It was the one thing I asked for every birthday. One day, my mom told me I could get one and I screamed. I was so excited. So this is my first introduction for my first rough draft, and now I'm going to turn that into my second rough draft. It says, I always wanted a dog. It was the one thing I asked for every birthday. My one special wish is to get a puppy, I'd say before I blew out my candles. This part in pink, friends, is a quote that Miss Anissa used. I put in quotation marks to show you what I would say before I blew out my candles. I said, quote, my one special wish is to get a puppy. I used my quotation marks to show that that is something that I said. Let me continue. And then, one day, my mom told me I could get a puppy. I think it's time, she said. Again, in the pink, you can see the quotation marks of what my mom said to me, and then I put she said so that you know who's talking. I screamed. I jumped up and down as I laughed and waved my arms. I was so excited. So friends, I added dialogue by using my quotation marks in my story. I even tried to show and not tell how I felt. Instead of just saying I was excited, I was able to show by saying I jumped up and down as I laughed and waved my arms. So not only do we want to focus on adding dialogue, but we should also try to show and not tell some of the feelings in our story. Let's see the next page. So now I have the body of my first draft and I have the body or the details of my second draft. Let me read what I wrote in my first draft. First, I searched Google to find a place to buy my new puppy. Next, my mom and I jumped in the car to drive to the pet shop. We sang songs the whole way there. Then we got to the shop. I looked through the window to see all the dogs they had. After that, I decided that the little brown puppy was my favorite. He was very cute and he liked to run around. Last, we drove my new dog home. While we were playing in the car together, I named him Reese. So although this first draft sounds pretty good, friends, because I used my time words, I used some action, I want to go to my second draft and make sure I add some more showing and not telling, and also add some quotation marks if I can, okay? So here we go with my rough draft number 2. First, I searched Google to find a place to buy my new puppy. My eyes were glued to the screen as I looked at page after page of pet stores. I tried to show and not tell how focused I was on Google. Then, Mom, I think I found one in West Virginia, I shouted to my mom. You can see how I put quotes to show that I shouted at my mom and told her, Mom, I think I found one in West Virginia. Next, my mom and I jumped in the car to drive to the pet shop. We sang songs the whole way there. "I bet you are so excited," my mom said to me. I nodded so much I thought my head would fly off. So you can see here, friends, I used a quote to say what my mom told me. She said, "I bet you were so excited." And then I tried to show and not tell how excited I was by nodding so much that I thought my head would fly off. Let's continue. Then we got to the shop. I looked through the window to see all the dogs they had. "Look at that small furry one. That other dog is huge," I thought to myself. So here in my rough draft, friends, I decided to add quotes to tell you what I was thinking. I was thinking about the small furry dogs and also the big ones. And I wrote, "I thought to myself." So you know that that was a thought that I had. After that, I decided that the little brown puppy was my favorite. "Can I have this one, Mom?" "Of course," she said with a big smile. This dog was very cute and he liked to run around. Last, we drove my new dog home. While we were playing in the car together, I gave him a name. "I think I'll call you Reese." So this here, friends, is how Miss Anissa turned her first draft into her second rough draft by adding some showing and not telling, adding quotation marks, and not forgetting to continue to use my time words like first, next, then, after that, and last. And then also I made sure to use my action words. So there's a lot to consider when writing your second rough draft, but I know that you guys can do it to make this a super duper wonderful final writing. Now you will have some time to work on your rough drafts. If you have any questions, you can ask Miss Anissa in class. Happy writing, friends!